if you're in this fighting game hobby, there's a zero sum aspect, right? So punching someone in the face is actually good for you. Like that's bad for the other person and good for you. That's what it means to be zero sum.
Good for me.
Yeah. And so I guess there is an interesting question. There's kind of an open secret in the FGC where it's kind of like, obviously, when you win, you're happy to win. Obviously, like this is why we play these games. We try to get that W. But then at the same time, there are people who talk about like being happy that they made someone else salty, right? Now this is kind of this is an interesting topic, right? And then I call this an open secret because it's not something that anybody can openly be proud of, like I made that person salty. I made that person hit his stick after the match or whatever. But it might be but it might be like a story that you tell like over like drinks or beers afterwards, right? But I guess this is kind of an interesting question because it's kind of hard if somebody were to say like there's nothing that I feel if somebody feels salty. I only feel bad for that person. Like it seems a little bit kind of like missing the whole picture of that emotion, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess what do you make of that? I'm still trying to parse this together. I'm just kind of like, are we all like ruthless like people that are just like out there to like, just like ruin their day, or is there something deeper? Like, is this something? Well, as long as it's about the game, it's okay. But if it's outside the game, obviously that's when it gets personal. You don't want to ever get to that. But there's something about like also the fact that there's an importance to salt in getting people for people to get better in the community, right? So if you don't care about the game, then if no one cared about having lost, then how can anybody really get good? If no one cares, they just drop the stick and they do something else. They go into basket weaving or play a traditional sport, whatever. And so this is kind of an interesting question. I'd like to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the context matters a lot. Like, not all salt is equal. There's like sea salt, and then there's like
Himalayan salt.
There's Himalayan salt. Yeah, like it all depends on the person and like kind of like what they value. Like for when it comes to salt, about like there's salt that I'll feel bad for players that maybe feel frustrated about execution errors. I think that's like one that I always feel bad for, even still to this day, right? Because when I'm playing in a tournament match, I want both of us to play our best game, or what we feel is our best game in our minds, right? So when I see someone like maybe misinput like a combo or something, maybe the combo would have won them the whole game. It's still hard for me to feel like it's still hard for me not to feel a little bad for them, like even today. But it really depends on like where the salt is coming from, like within the game. I think that really does like determine like where it comes from. And also on the topic of like sometimes feeling good for other people getting salty, like I've definitely had that too. Like I'm not absolved of that. Like for example, like whenever I beat a Happy Chaos player at Guilty Gear, like I feel like I'm on the top of the world. I'm like, I moved all these boulders up these mountains. Like I've definitely felt that as emotion as well. Like it really just depends. That's the Himalayan salt.
That's the Himalayan salt. Yeah, that's there's definitely different strains of salt, and I guess there's a satisfaction. Yeah, when you beat a Happy Chaos, and I think anybody who beats a Happy Chaos, at this point, right? It's can feel that gratification for. Finally, I made you frustrated for once instead of you making me frustrated with your hit scan mechanic or whatever, right? So there's definitely that kind of satisfaction. I think there's something about that as well, that on a deeper level, I feel that if you're seeing other people, get salty about that kind of stuff, it's like, oh man, like I thought my tactic worked, or I thought my setups, it would be easy to beat this person, but they beat me. There is a satisfaction in knowing that it's kind of the level has increased, right? And then but then the other person's salt, I feel, can be seen as an indicator that, all right, well, that person might come back with some other tech and we can all get better, right? So it's a complicated thing, and that's why I think it's a fun topic to talk about, because it's not all it's not all one thing, like you said, different strains of salts. So we kind of had this I guess to go a little bit further on this topic that we've been talking about how you can direct the salt is directed at different things for different people. And I guess there's one question I'm trying to grapple is it okay to just be like Ryu all the time, where it's you face a defeat and you're just like, oh, I must do better. I still have a long way to go, and then you win, and then you say the same thing. But I'm still not there yet. I must have a long way to go.
He's been doing that for over 30 years now.
Yeah, if you look at Street Fighter 4's like opening quote for Ryu, he says, I think in Japanese, he says, "Ore no kachi ga tayo danai," right? Which basically means, I think it means like my value is not enough, right? I think kachi is like
to improve.
Yeah, he's always looking to improve, and obviously it's a very fictional character, and like I've we've had some conversations with the I think the Tong crew about this, how it's like, Ryu is. This is clearly like not a normal person, because you can't be like that like all the time. Like it's like impossible.
About Ryu.
Yeah, there's definitely like it's like I kind of want to go up to him and like, hey, like it's okay, man. Like
it's okay to be this way.
Yeah, we can all like high five each other after a win.
And celebrate your win for once.
Yeah, and like if it's like you don't have to like walk away from the ceremony like every single tournament. You can stand there, but it's interesting. Something Daigo says in his book, which is Daigo's kind of a player where like people actually have like have called Daigo Ryu in like commentary when he was like he was maining Ryu at the time, but then
he literally
like
played Ryu,
they kind of see like Daigo's almost like a human embodiment of the best side of Ryu, and I think even in his book, he mentions like, I celebrate whenever I get a big victory or a big W, but I just make sure that it's short. But he still celebrates, right? He doesn't want to get complacent, right? He's like allergic to complacency. But I guess, from your perspective, I mean, how do you see this idea of like, we know that if you're like a salty person that just blames everything else for, not winning, then you're probably not going to improve if you really believe that. If you really believe that there's nothing you can do to improve and it's really just everything else's fault. But on the complete opposite end of someone like Ryu, is there some like folly to that? Is there something about that where like maybe you would have a talk with Ryu about?
Ryu maybe might be the extreme, but I do think his mindset, right, of like improvement is good, right? Like I think improvement is a good mindset to have. You want to get better at the game, but I think at the same time you need to feel your emotions. Like it is not wrong you shouldn't feel bad for being salty. I think that's or you shouldn't feel bad for being very happy for like a victory, right? I think like if I was Ryu, I would be like, I fight Guile and I'd be like, man, Sonic moves are kind of broken. They're really fast. That's bullshit. And then I'd be like salty about it. And then I'd be back on my, like, I must become stronger in the heart of battle, like the next moment after. But I still want to, like, feel a little salty that Guile's Sonic moves are just faster than my Hadouken.
Better in almost every way.
Yeah. It's like, it's not wrong to feel that way. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
But I think where players kind of run into the trap of just only feeling the salt and it, like, overpowering any avenues to improve afterwards is where it gets bad, right? You can see a win from a character where it, like, maybe it's like a bad matchup, for example, and you can be like, oh man, there's nothing I could have done anyway. Like it was out of my control. Like it was a 7-3 matchup. He has way better options than I could. What's the point, right? And that's, I think, a very bad mentality, right? Your salt is essentially like dictating you not improving. Like you just stay the same because you feel like you did everything in your power. But that's never the case. Like you could always have done something like better or maybe sometimes like the result of the match will, it just is like that. Sometimes you were just wrong a few times and the other player played well that day, and that's fine too. I think that's also a fine like assessment, but you shouldn't just be like, you shouldn't just give up just from feeling too much salt. I think that's a bad mentality to have. You should eventually get to the Ryu mindset and get back on the streets.
I think the Ryu mindset does exist even with people who are just utterly known as somebody who's completely salty and just kind of nothing that happens is the person's lacking in skill. It's always about the other person's lack of skill or the environment or whatever. Even people who are completely invested in projecting that way, I think they do have the Ryu mindset inside on some level, because you have to.
On some level.
You can't, just as much as it's impossible to be a Ryu, I think it's impossible to not have any of that aspect. And I think the way some people talk, like after the match, they might just like shit talk the other player on Twitter and be salty about it. But you know that you don't know if how much of the Ryu mindset takes over afterwards for that person. So I think it's also not quite accurate to think that just because people display very kind of like outwardly salty behavior, that they're not actually having any kind of Ryu mindset. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a that should be a consideration.
Easy to get the wrong idea of someone just from like how they carry themselves publicly, right? It's like, oh, this like punk guy, he's only salty all the time. Like, I don't, he doesn't acknowledge like his losses and improve. No, he clearly does. Like maybe he'll get salty in the moment after like a match and he'll just say what's on his mind, because that's just the type of person he is. But he for sure will, maybe off camera or something, like go back and think about his loss and see what he could have done better. And he'll improve. He just might not be Ryu about it, like in public, and that's
in public,
fine. Like it's
no, I mean, and that's kind of there's colorful personalities in the FGC for that, and this is why it's a the game itself, how it can make people respond and behave in different ways is kind of it's almost like it gives you a reflection, right, of like how you are, and it's. Yeah, you kind of, everyone gets exposed when they play fighting games, right? On some level, everyone gets exposed on some level. And